Before there was a resume, there was a reputation. Before there was a salary, there was a skill. And before anyone ever told you to get a stable job, Americans were already out there making money in ways so strange, so forgotten, that when you hear them today they almost sound made up. But they're not. Every single one of these is real. And more than a few of them are working again right now. Number 1. Selling ice door to door. Refrigerators didn't exist until the 1920s. Before that, if you wanted cold food, cold drinks, or a way to preserve medicine, you needed ice delivered directly to your home. Icemen woke up before dawn every single morning, loaded massive blocks onto horse-drawn wagons, and drove through every neighborhood in every American city making deliveries. Customers left a card in their window showing how many pounds they needed that day. Different card, different amount. The Iceman memorized every route, every customer, every preference. It was a subscription business before anyone had a word for it. The routes themselves became valuable assets that Icemen bought, sold, and passed down to their sons. A man with a good route in a dense neighborhood was essentially running a logistics company out of a wagon. And the Iceman who showed up on time, every single day, regardless of weather, built something that paid him reliably for decades. Number 2. Lamplighting. Every evening before electricity existed, someone had to walk the streets of every American city and manually light every single gas lamp. Every morning, before sunrise, someone had to walk those same streets and put every one of them out. That someone was a lamplighter, and that someone was paid by the city. Lamplighters had assigned routes, specific lamps they were personally responsible for, and they were held accountable if any lamp on their block was dark. They knew their neighborhoods better than the police did. They saw everything: who came home late, which houses had lights burning at unusual hours, where trouble was brewing. When Thomas Edison's electric grid began spreading through American cities in the 1880s, thousands of lamplighters lost their entire livelihood inside a single decade. An entire profession, centuries old, erased by technology almost overnight. The speed of it was shocking even then. Sound familiar? Number 3. Leech collecting. In the 1800s, medical doctors used leeches constantly and without apology. Bloodletting, the deliberate removal of blood from a patient, was considered legitimate and effective treatment for fevers, headaches, infections, inflammation, and almost everything else a doctor didn't fully understand, which was most things. Hospitals and physicians needed a large and steady supply of live leeches at all times. So people, often poor women and children living near water, would wade into ponds, marshes, and slow-moving streams, stand still, and let leeches attach themselves to their bare legs. Then they would carefully remove them, keep them alive in jars of water, and sell them to apothecaries and medical offices in town. It paid real money. It was genuinely miserable work. And it was a legitimate, regularly practiced income source that thousands of real Americans depended on to survive. The demand was so relentless that several leech species were pushed to the edge of extinction from overharvesting across the United States and Europe. Number 4. Knocking people up. The official job title was knocker-upper, and before you say anything, it meant exactly what it sounds like it shouldn't mean. Before alarm clocks were affordable or reliable, factories, railroads, and shipyards needed their workers present and on time every single morning. Tardiness cost production. So they hired people, often older women and retired men, to walk through working-class neighborhoods before dawn carrying long bamboo poles or small pea shooters, tapping and rattling on bedroom windows until the person inside woke up, acknowledged them, and was confirmed out of bed. They were paid per client, per morning, on a weekly basis. A knocker-upper who built a good route with reliable customers had steady, predictable income every single week. The job existed in American and British industrial cities well into the 1920s, running parallel to the rise of the affordable alarm clock that eventually replaced it entirely. Your phone alarm, the one you hit snooze on 3 times this morning, replaced an actual human being who once stood outside your window in the cold and dark waiting for you to wave. Number 5. Rat catching. Cities have always had rats. They had them in ancient Rome and they had them in 19th century New York and Chicago and Boston, and the rats of the industrial American city were enormous, aggressive, and genuinely dangerous to food supplies and public health. The solution was a man with good dogs and the willingness to go into the dark places where the rats lived. Rat catchers were hired by restaurants, grain warehouses, shipping docks, and city governments to clear infestations, and the best of them were specialists who bred and trained their own terrier dogs specifically and carefully for the work. Some rat catchers captured their rats alive and sold them to underground gambling dens that ran rat baiting contests, events where spectators packed into a pit and bet money on how many rats a single dog could kill within a set time. It was disgusting and it was wildly popular. The rat catcher who understood the full value chain, catch them, sell them twice, keep the dogs breeding, was running a pest control company, an animal operation, and a supply business simultaneously, out of nothing but knowledge and nerve. Number 6. Chimney sweeping. Every home in America burned wood or coal for heat and for cooking. Every single fireplace produced soot, and that soot built up inside the chimney walls over weeks and months until the buildup became a serious fire hazard. A chimney fire didn't just destroy a fireplace, it destroyed the house, and in dense neighborhoods it could destroy the houses on either side too. So chimney sweeps were not optional. They were necessary. Sweeps worked year-round, moving from house to house, charging per chimney cleaned, and the ones who worked efficiently and showed up when they said they would build routes through entire neighborhoods that kept them busy every single week. The business required almost no startup capital, brushes, rods, and a willingness to get filthy. The man who owned the operation, managed the schedule, and kept the customers happy built something that generated reliable income in every season, in every city, for as long as people needed heat. Which was always. Number 7. Tooth pulling. Before dentistry was a licensed and regulated profession, teeth were pulled by whoever was willing and confident enough to do it. Barbers, blacksmiths, general store owners, and most commonly, traveling tooth pullers who moved from town to town setting up in public squares and courthouse steps. Some of them traveled with musicians who played loud enough to drown out the sounds coming from the chair. They charged a small fee per extraction, they used no anesthesia because there was none, and they offered no follow-up care because they'd be in the next town by Thursday. The ones who developed a reputation for being fast built genuine followings because in a world without pain relief, speed was the only mercy available. People traveled from neighboring farms specifically to see a tooth puller known for a quick hand. Paul Revere, silversmith, patriot, midnight rider advertised tooth pulling services in Boston newspapers. It was just another skill that paid. Number 8. Corpse sitting. When someone died in early America, the body could not simply be left alone until burial. It had to be watched, continuously, through the night, by someone who was awake and present. This practice came from a combination of religious tradition, cultural custom, and a very practical fear that was completely rational at the time: premature burial. In an era before reliable medical death certification, before the understanding of deep comas and seizure states, the fear of burying someone still alive was not paranoia. It was documented. It happened. So families hired watchers, sometimes called night watchers or simply sitters, to stay with the body from the moment of death until the moment of burial. The pay was a flat fee for the night. The requirement was nothing more than the willingness to sit alone in a room with a dead person and stay awake until morning. In rural communities where neighbors lived miles apart and the family was already exhausted from grief and caregiving, this was a service people paid for quietly and gratefully, every single time it was needed. Number 9. Human billboard walking. Before digital advertising existed, before highway billboards, before radio and television and banner ads and sponsored posts, businesses still needed to reach people. And the most direct way to reach people was to put your message in front of them while they were already walking around. So businesses hired men to become the advertisement themselves. A sandwich board was two large painted wooden signs connected by straps, one hanging across the chest and one across the back, worn over the shoulders like a wearable billboard. The man wearing it was paid by the day to walk a specific route through the busiest streets during the busiest hours, turning himself into a moving advertisement that thousands of people saw up close. The job required nothing except showing up sober and walking the assigned route. By the late 1800s, the business had professionalized entirely. Agencies existed in major American cities that managed dozens or hundreds of sandwich board men simultaneously, recruiting walkers, assigning routes, collecting fees from advertisers, and running what was essentially the first outdoor advertising network in American history. Number 10. Grave robbing for medical schools. This one requires some context before the judgment. Medical schools in 19th century America desperately needed cadavers to train surgeons and physicians properly. The legal supply was nearly non-existent, only the bodies of executed criminals could be used, and executions were not frequent enough to meet demand. So a shadow economy developed to fill the gap. Men called resurrectionists, or more plainly, body snatchers, organized themselves into crews, identified recently buried bodies from obituaries and graveyard records, returned to the cemetery at night with shovels, and exhumed the fresh graves. They sold the bodies directly to medical schools with no paperwork and no questions asked on either side. Harvard Medical School, the University of Pennsylvania, and other respected American institutions were regular customers for decades. The men who did this work could earn more in a single night than a factory worker made in a full week. It was dangerous, discovery meant arrest, and communities sometimes formed armed grave-watching groups to protect their dead. It was criminal. And it directly, undeniably shaped the legal frameworks around body donation and medical research that exist in the United States today. The system changed because of them. Number 11. Pony Express writing. The Pony Express existed for exactly 18 months, from April 1860 to October 1861, and in that time it became one of the most iconic images in all of American economic history. The original job advertisement asked specifically for young men who were preferably orphans, because the company wanted writers with no family to grieve them if they didn't make it back. They were paid to ride horses at full gallop across 1,900 miles of open wilderness between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California, switching to a fresh horse at relay stations every 10 miles, carrying locked mail pouches that were guaranteed to arrive on schedule regardless of weather, terrain, or anything else that got in the way. The pay was extraordinary by the standards of the time. The physical and mental demands were beyond what most men could sustain. And then in October 1861, 2 months after the transcontinental telegraph line was completed, the entire Pony Express operation shut down permanently. The technology made it obsolete in weeks. 18 months. An entire industry, the riders, the horses, the stations, the route born and dead inside a year and a half. Number 12. Selling hair. Women with long, thick, healthy hair had something that the market genuinely wanted and was willing to pay real money for. Wigmakers, theatrical costumers, manufacturers of hairpieces and extensions, and wealthy private clients all needed human hair and could not always source enough of it through normal channels. Women who found themselves in sudden financial hardship, widows left without income, immigrants who arrived with nothing, women abandoned by husbands who left without warning, could walk into a wigmaker's shop, sit down, and walk out 20 minutes later with enough cash to cover a month's rent. The transaction was private, it was fast, and it required nothing except having grown something your own body produced. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't comfortable. Having your hair cut short when long hair was the social standard for femininity carried real social weight. But it was one of the few sources of immediate cash that a woman in crisis could access entirely on her own terms, without asking anyone for permission or help.